Senator Feldman, we're ready to start.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Senate Finance Committee. We've got, again, we did have 8 bills on the calendar today. 1 was canceled, so we're down to 7. And let me just read the bill order for everybody's reference. So we're going to start with Senate Bill 387, which is Senator Casserly. Senate Bill 242, which is on the calendar, has been canceled. Next up will be Senate Bill 359, and then Senate Bill 411, Senate Bill 399, Senate Bill 372, Senate Bill 412, and then finally Senate Bill 100. Chair Kelly is actually testifying one of her bills in JPR right now in another committee. And when she returns, I'll turn it back over to her. And before we go to Senator Casserly for the first bill, let me just, again, for everybody's reference out there in the world, the sponsor of the bill gets unlimited time, but don't abuse that privilege. And then the sponsor gets to designate 1 lead witness on the supportive favorable panel, and they get 5 minutes. Everybody else gets 2.5 minutes, both favorable and unfavorable. So those are the rules. And so with that said, Senator Casserly, we're going to start with you on Senate Bill 387, and you were actually the only witness signed up for oral testimony today. There's a fair amount of, there's written testimony, but you're the only one in person. So Senator Casserly, tell us what Senate Bill 387 does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the community. It's a pleasure to be here. So in my earliest stages of my political forays in the municipal and county level government, one thing that really surprised me was the power of a well-constructed network of walkways to build strong communities. People, kids, older folks, all folks will interact, brings communities together when they feel like they can safely walk around their communities on the weekends and the evenings. We at the state level ought to do, in my opinion, whatever we can do to encourage municipal and county level governments to invest in well-constructed networks of walkways. So I looked in this all comes to light because of a particular situation in my own county where I've got the local municipality and the county constructed about 2 miles of walkway and connecting a rather large number of residential developments. And then they also constructed a second walkway of about 2 miles, connecting another large network of developments. Unfortunately, between these 2 sections of about 2 miles each, there's a state highway going through the middle of my district, pretty much bifurcates my district north and south. And that state highway, it's about at a particular intersection has about 4 lanes at that intersection. So now because you have the state highway, rather than having a very nice 4 miles of walkways, you've got 2 shorter sections of 2 miles each. So what my bill does is say, look, it's in the state's interest to say that when you've got 2 miles, when the locals are investing the money, there's no state tax dollars involved in building those sidewalks. It's nothing to us. When you've got the locals committing to that kind of investment, and sidewalks not cheap, as we all know, when you've got them investing that kind of money, we ought to leverage that. And we leverage that simply by providing for a safe crosswalk connecting those 2 pieces. Look, you all sit and listen to these issues. I'm JPR. We look at crime. We don't look at crosswalks much. So I really defer to the committee, and perhaps this bill oughtn't be a standalone, and maybe it ought to be the provisions here may lie better in another bill that you're working on. I don't know, but I do. My experience just comes from municipal and county level government of knowing the importance of these projects, and the objective of the bill is to compel the state authorities to really look seriously and value the investment and incentivize these investments by counties and municipalities by leveraging what they've done to make a larger network of walkways and not allow our investment in a state highway to in any way interfere with that. So in essence, that's the bill. If it's Senate Bill 387, and it simply requires that the state has to, when the county and the local folks make this kind of investment, that we need to leverage that investment by putting in the appropriate crossways. And I know those aren't cheap. Some of those can be fairly expensive if you have to put in the lights and the crosswalk. But when you compare that amount versus the investment in several miles of walkway, it's well worth the investment. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my bill. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
Appreciate you all giving me your time.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Casserly about 387? Okay, I don't see any. I think that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 380.
I'm sure Senator Kelly will be glad to have me back in JPR promptly.
Yeah, you better rush back there. Okay. Next bill we're going to go to, and as I think I mentioned earlier, Senate Bill 242 has been canceled today, but we're going to go to Senator Rosapep. Senate Bill 359. Senator.
Thank you very, very much. First of all, I want to associate myself with Senator Casserly's bill, representing a large piece of Route 1, which on either side are tens of thousands of residents who have exactly this problem. I'm with Senator Casserly in spirit on his proposal. So my bill deals with the Purple Line, which folks here are familiar with. And in building the Purple Line, as in building major projects like this, they had to cut down a lot of trees. And in cutting down the trees, state law, basically developers, including in this case the MTA, have to replace the trees theoretically. But the way the law actually works is they basically put money to plant a tree someplace else. And so in real life, often what happens is the places where the trees were cut down never get the trees back. Big deal in an urbanized area where you have all the problems of from an environmental point of view, from a comfort point of view, from people walking to the train point of view, it's a big problem. So what this bill basically says, plan to really re-tree the areas along the Purple Line. This is an environmental justice issue, obviously, as well, because many of these areas are ones that are low income. A big part of it in Senator Augustine's district goes through Langley Park, which is sort of the heart of Latino Maryland. And these are working class folks. And they didn't have a lot of trees to begin with, and they got less trees now. So all basically, and the reason this is a state bill, I mean, I raised the question with the House proponents of why don't we have the counties do it? And they said, look, with all due respect, getting Montgomery County and Prince George's County to solve this particular problem around a state project is probably not the way to go. This is a state project, the Purple Line, and we ought to have a little state leadership here. So all this bill does is basically say that the Department of Transportation has to come up with a plan for getting trees planted along this route. It has a fiscal note attached to it because the fiscal note writer assumed that we wouldn't get money from other places. In real life, Senator Pinsky has a very big bill he's working on in EHE, which will come over to B&T we dealt with last year, which as part of our major climate change effort, fighting climate change in the state, requires planting a gazillion trees over the next few years. And that's an obvious place for the money to come from once this plan is established, as well as the fact that the new Biden administration has articulated a very strong commitment to dealing with climate change, and trees are a big part of that. So basically, the point of this bill is let's have a plan and then let's find the money. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Rosapep? Okay, thank you, Senator. We're going to go to you, who you've designated Talisha Searcy from the city of Tacoma Park as your lead in support, and as a result, she gets 5 minutes. Ms. Searcy, you've got 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I appreciate your time. So again, my name is Talisha Searcy. I am the City Council member representing Ward 6 in the City of Tacoma Park, which includes aspects of the Tacoma-Langley Crossroads area. The City of Tacoma Park strongly supports a plan to replace trees removed during construction of the Purple Line project. It is critical that the state prioritizes and addresses environmental justice factors including heat island effects that impacted communities when making these decisions. The City of Tacoma Park is a Purple Line advocate. The project will help to foster a more livable city by providing access to environmentally friendly form of transit for our residents. However, we have been challenged by the prolonged construction that has happened in our community. Also, the fact that will have a lasting effect in terms of the loss of trees in our area. I think it's really important to acknowledge that the section of our city that is most directly affected by the Purple Line construction, my ward, Ward 6, has over 70% people of color who have historically bore the cost of environmental injustices. In 2018, the city worked to commission a report with the University of Vermont that found that our ward, this area, is actually currently underserved by the city's existing tree canopy. And the area immediately affected by construction is also heavily commercialized and especially vulnerable to heat sinks in the tree canopy's absence. It's also important to note that this is an area of a community where there are a number of people who rely heavily on bus transit and pedestrian and visiting the commercial areas by foot. That same assessment from the University of Vermont confirmed that the area is highly privately managed, and it is important that the state coordinates with businesses and residents to restore the tree canopy loss in the process of building the Purple Line, as is called for in this legislation. As the Purple Line construction moves forward, the state should make sure not to forget about those who've suffered thus far. To ensure the City of Tacoma Park's residents and other communities impacted by Purple Line construction are made whole for the loss of their tree canopy and have the opportunity to weigh in on its restoration, the City of Tacoma Park strongly urges favorable consideration of SB 359. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in terms of the City of Tacoma Park's resources and studies that have been done of this area and tree canopy coverage, as well as the impacts that we've had as a community as a result of Purple Line construction.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Searcy, for your testimony. Any questions for Ms. Searcy on Senate Bill 359? Okay, thank you. We're going to go to the final witness. Susan Nerlinger from the Sierra Club is here. Susan, you get 2.5 minutes, and you've signed up favorable.
Yes.
Final witness in terms of oral testimony for this bill.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Susan Nerlinger, and I live in Olney, Maryland, and I'm a member of the Sierra Club. And the Sierra Club supports Senate Bill 359. The Purple Line will be a great addition to the public transit infrastructure in Prince George's and Montgomery counties, and the Sierra Club has consistently supported its construction. But 200 tall, mature trees had to be cut down to accommodate construction of the Purple Line. They were magnificent, towering oaks, tulip, poplars, pines, and others. To comply with the Maryland Forest Conservation Act, forest bank credits were purchased to mitigate the tree loss. But unfortunately, these trees will be planted at a location far away from where the trees were removed. SB 359 seeks to remedy this loss of trees in the vicinity of the Purple Line by directing the Departments of Environment and Transportation to develop a plan to plant replacement trees close to the Purple Line in areas where their beneficial effects are most needed, that is, heat islands or where there are environmental justice issues. The benefit of trees to the health of people and the environment are well documented. A single mature tree can absorb climate-damaging carbon dioxide at a rate of 21.6 kilograms per year. And it releases enough oxygen into the atmosphere to support 2 humans. Ozone, a powerful respiratory hazard, is reduced by 3 to 7% for every 10% increase in the urban tree canopy. Trees also capture nitrogen. Their shade lowers ambient air temperature, and they provide vital habitat for animals in water and on land. They slow and filter stormwater, runoff, stabilize stream banks, and reduce erosion. Trees also have aesthetic value. In summary, trees help create clean air, clean water, and habitat for life. And that is why the Sierra Club supports Senate Bill 359. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the witness, Ms. Nerlinger? Okay, don't see any. That concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 359. And we're now going to turn to Senate Bill 411. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Ben Kramer introducing Senate Bill 411. Colleagues, this will be vaguely familiar to you as this bill was heard a couple of years ago in the committee as a consequence of the repeated pleas for help from seniors, not just in my district, but from across the state on this issue of long-term care insurance premium costs. I have brought this bill back. So the problem has been, and this is primarily with people who are now probably in their 70s and 80s and bought these policies 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the long-term care insurance industry was in its fledgling stages when they began offering, because they thought it would be exceedingly profitable, insurance for long-term care. And as time went by, it turns out the calculations that the industry made were not completely accurate. People are living longer than they had anticipated. People are staying in care facilities longer than they had anticipated. The return on the investments from the premiums that they bill has not been as strong as what they calculated it would be over the last couple of decades. So the routine now is that they go in, they ask for premium increases, and they're granted those premium increases. And they compound year after year. Now, we in Maryland, by regulation, cap those increases in any given year at 15%. But when you have these companies coming in every year, year in or in year out, you can imagine what that does in just 3, 4, 5 years to a senior living on a very limited budget who did the right thing, trying to look out for their own personal well-being rather than being dependent on the state for their care. And they purchased what was represented to them to be a product that would help them in their senior years. What has occurred for the last decade is that the industry that made all the miscalculations has balanced the cost of those miscalculations on the backs of the seniors. They have not absorbed any of their miscalculations. They continue to at least break even, at the very least break even, if not profit. Meanwhile, our seniors find themselves in a position where they may have a policy they've been paying 10, 15, 20 years, 25, or even 30 years for. And suddenly they can't afford to keep this insurance any longer. So then they're given possibly a couple of options. One, drop the policy. Now the insurance company has reaped all the benefit of those premiums and never had to pay out a dime. Pretty good gig. The other option that some companies offer is what they call a landing spot. Well, okay, in exchange for our reducing the premium for you because it's gone up 3, 4, 5 times what it originally was over the past 5 or 6 years, we're going to reduce the payout. So instead of getting $100 a day for the time you're in care, you're going to get $50 a day. Once again, the insurance companies are held harmless. So in prior years, when I've come in with legislation, the insurance industry is always here and up in arms. And what do they say? Well, legislation I've introduced that caps the amount of the premium increase in any given year to try to offer some protection for our seniors. They say we'll bankrupt the company. We'll be out of business if you cap us. We won't be able to survive. All right. What about if we cap it at an age level? You can't increase the premiums after this age. And they've come in and said, well, we're just going to bill everybody else the cost for doing it. And that's not fair. All right. So their answer has been, we're not going to do anything. We like the way the game's being played right now. So I thought about it and I said, okay, let's address this at the heart of the problem. This industry continues to make tens of millions of dollars a year in premiums, and they pay out dividends to stockholders. They pay out bonuses to their executives, and they're still coming back to our seniors and saying, your premium's going up. We don't care whether it's forcing you to drop your coverage or not. We've got your money. So the bill before you begins to address and put in place a little bit of equity for the first time in this issue. And listen, if you don't have seniors in your legislative district, this bill may be of no interest to you. I do. And I hear their pain. I hear their concern. I feel their pain. And I feel compelled to say we have an obligation as a state government to intercede when there's a reason. So the bill before you provides that in a year, when an insurance underwriter that provides long-term care insurance offers or has an increase in their premiums, in that year, they cannot pay a dividend to stockholders or a bonus to their executives. Wow, can you imagine the craziness, the turmoil that will cause on Wall Street? But the bottom line is, for the first time, we're giving them a little bit of motivation to stop beating up the elderly in our state and to say, listen, by the way, the customers here, the senior citizens, they didn't do the calculations. The insurance industry experts did the calculations, came up with the premiums and said, now this is how we're going to make money. But they've never had to pay the cost of their miscalculations. Our seniors do. So this bill does no harm. It doesn't cut them off from being able to increase their premiums if it's legitimate. But if they do, they're going to prove it's legitimate and say, all right, sorry, stockholders, sorry, executives, no big bonuses this Christmas because we had to go and beat up on Maryland seniors for more money. So now we're not going to be paying out these bonuses or dividends. With that, committee, I certainly welcome any questions. I will also share with you that in pretty much every instance, the folks who underwrite long-term care, and maybe they're not, it may not be a profit center for them, but they also underwrite health insurance, they underwrite life insurance, they underwrite property and casualty insurance, and they're making lots of money. And so they had come in for years and represented in the committees that they're not allowed to take from one pot and move it over to the other pot to offset losses. When I finally reached out and asked for that documentation in writing from the Maryland Insurance Administration, the Attorney General's office, and the insurance companies themselves, turned out that was in fact a falsehood. They can absolutely dip in from one pot to cover losses in another. They don't want to do that, but they can. So again, the legislation before you provides that if they're going to pay bonuses, if they're going to do dividends, then don't come into Maryland and beat up on my seniors anymore, or any of the seniors in our great state who did the right thing when they purchased these policies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kramer. Any questions for the sponsor of the bill, Senate Bill 411? Okay, I don't see any questions. So we're going to go to, we've got one witness signed unfavorable, Neil Karkanis. Neil, you're signed up unfavorable, and you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Feldman and members of the committee. My name is Neil Karkanis, here on behalf of the American Council of Life Insurers, America's Health Insurance Plan, and the League of Life and Health Insurers in Maryland. ACLI members offer life insurance, annuities, retirement plans, long-term care and disability income insurance, and reinsurance, representing 94% of the industry assets, 93% of life insurance premiums, and 97% of annuity considerations in the United States. I'm here on their behalf to respectfully urge the committee to reject Senate Bill 411. Our member insurers writing long-term care insurance do recognize and understand Senator Kramer's concerns with premium rate increases on long-term care insurance policies. These groups were before this committee 2 years ago, and we did debate this topic. And Senator Kramer is totally right that the policies were initially written incorrectly. As a result, long-term care carriers are simply trying to break even until the legacy policies are no longer a part of the book of business. I also want to remind this committee that last year you all did a very good thing by passing the Guarantee Fund. The Guarantee Fund offers the means for people who have policies with a carrier that becomes insolvent to still receive their benefits. And that fund was created so that the public would be protected in the event that toxic assets such as long-term care policies completely destroy an insurance business. In fact, this happened in Pennsylvania just a couple of years ago with Penn Treaty becoming insolvent. So this bill, quite frankly, could test the Guarantee Fund. The fact is that long-term care costs a lot of money. The cost of care can range anywhere from, on the very low end, $17,000 to on the high end, about 79 grand. In some cases, the cost of care is well over $100,000 per year. It's expensive and people are getting older. That's why these policies were written incorrectly many years ago. And these companies own that. Long-term care insurance products, they're monitored to ensure that a reasonable portion of lifetime premiums are used for the benefits to policyholders as experience develops. The insurance is written on a guaranteed renewable basis, which allows carriers to adjust premiums to reflect emerging experience. Rate increases result from adverse experience that may affect current or future returns. So looking only at a company's current financial standing is completely misleading. Yes, there are larger businesses that have other types of insurance products, but smaller businesses don't offer all these different insurance products. And in fact, the Maryland Insurance Administration has oversight on this very issue. In determining whether to disapprove or modify a premium rate filing, the commissioner must consider several things. 1, past and prospective loss experience inside and outside the state. 2, underwriting practice and judgment. 3, a reasonable margin for reserve needs. 4, past and prospective expensive nationally and in Maryland. 5, any other relevant factors. Each of those decisions or findings by the commissioner about premium rates is also
Time is
subject to
expiring.
review.
Mr.
We strongly
Kokonas, could you
believe.
Bring it to a close. Go on.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Feldman. We strongly believe this legislation does not appropriately address the fact that care is expensive. It continues to escalate, and our population is generally older. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to reject Senate Bill 411.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kokonas?
My hand's up, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Neil, let me ask you a question. You said that the poor insurance industry is quote unquote simply trying to break even. Do you see anything in this bill that you can point to and direct the committee and myself to that would prevent the insurance industry from breaking even? Can you direct me to language in this bill where you see that?
I do not see any language regarding breaking even. But,
Okay, so
a dividend.
the fact of the matter
but
is,
a
you
dividend
answered the question, Neil, you answered the question. I asked you simply, is there anything that you see in this bill? Because you made the point of saying we're simply trying to break even. So obviously there's nothing in this bill that would stop your industry from breaking even. Now, you did also go down a long list, a litany of things that the Maryland Insurance Administration considers when determining whether an increase in a premium is rightfully earned. Would you please direct me to where in this bill there is anything that makes reference to a change in that process? Anything that would prevent either the Maryland Insurance Administration or your industry coming before the Maryland Insurance Administration and going down that all those very well thought out items that have to be considered before a premium increase? Show me where in the bill it changes that, please.
Respectfully, Senator Kramer,
Language.
I think the bill itself restricts the ability for the insurance administration to go through the list. If
Do you see anything in there at
Senator,
all
let-
about
you
the
let-
Maryland
Let him
Insurance
finish his sentence. You
Administration?
gotta let him finish his sentence.
Please.
Yeah, let him finish his
I
sentence.
mean, according to the bill, in the event that there's a dividend or a bonus paid, then these insurance companies would not be able to raise their premiums. Therefore, they would not be able to go down that list that I outlined. The bill itself restricts the insurance administration's ability to do their work.
There is nothing in this bill that, please, and correct me if I'm wrong, that says the industry cannot come in and seek that increase and let the Maryland Insurance Administration, and please, the language that says they can't. What it does say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you all do that, come in and get an increase, and once again, balance your miscalculations, which you acknowledge, by the way, in your testimony occurred, that the industry screwed up, but you want to at least break even, so you all don't absorb any of the loss of your miscalculation. It all is entirely on the backs of Maryland seniors. But where in the bill does it say that you can't come before the Maryland Insurance Administration? All it says is if you do and you get that premium increase, then don't pay out big dividends to stockholders or big bonuses to your executives. How does that hamstring your ability to come before the MIA? Would you answer that question?
Senator Kramer, I believe I did answer the question.
Okay, thank you. No, in that case, I definitely appreciate it. You know what, I will, there was one other, I think, important point. You mentioned this Penn Treaty, Pennsylvania company a number of years ago went bust. And by the way, I'm very familiar with the history of that. And there were lots and lots of failures that caused that to occur, not just because of premium increases being denied or accepted on this particular issue. But you said we would be knocking on the door, perhaps, of putting Maryland at risk if this bill were to pass. Can you point to me, please, where in that document you believe it indicates the insurance industry will be put at risk of going out of business if this bill were to be passed?
Senator Kramer, I think this is why this committee and the legislature passed the guarantee fund last session, which was great work. We passed that law to ensure that insurance companies that are risking insolvency as a result of toxic assets, we all agree these are toxic assets, we're making sure that folks are protected.
And what do you believe is going to, and last question, how do you believe they will be, how will the residents of Maryland be unprotected if your industry doesn't pay big bonuses to their CEOs or big dividends to their stockholders and instead increases the premiums on my seniors in this state? How is that protecting your industry? Can you, or excuse me, the people of Maryland? I apologize. You said that it's protect.
I think, sure. I think that the Maryland Insurance Administration does a fine job of protecting the constituents of Maryland,
Okay.
especially seniors, given the litany, the test that they have to go through for any premium rate increases.
Thank you for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 411. We will now turn to Senator Carter, Senate Bill 399. Jill, are you there? I see you. Senator Carter? Senator Carter. There you are. Okay, Senator Carter, we have you up for Senate Bill 399, and you, as the sponsor, have unlimited time to describe your bill.
Thank you. Well, I hope that I get some browning points, Mr. Chairman, for being brief. This should be a pretty simple bill. Last year, this committee and our entire body passed an underlying bill, which was a great idea, a great bill, which simply reduced the Mass Transit Administration fare for patients in opioid treatment programs from the normal monthly fee of $74 to $22. And that was a wonderful gesture on our part. However, the glitch in the system was that these patients still have been unable to access these passes with any kind of ease. And so what this bill does is step 2 is simply require or allow for these treatment programs to actually be able to issue the passes themselves rather than MTA. Currently, patients all over the state of Maryland have to go to Baltimore to this one location to receive their pass. So all we're seeking to do with this bill is to modify it so that patients can get their passes, their transportation passes at their actual facilities. I'm joined by my experts, the same panel that I had last year. I'm happy to answer any questions either before or after they testify. You also have my much better presented written testimony that's a little bit more formal, but I think that I've laid out pretty much what the bill does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Senator. Any questions for Senator Carter, the sponsor? Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, just a quick question. Did you see the letter of information from MDOT regarding the complications of trying to implement this? And if so, have you worked that out with them?
I have not seen the letter of information. I did see the fiscal note, and I felt the fiscal note was not very specific. I'm not sure if it's the same issue, but I know the fiscal note estimated that this would be quite costly because they estimated that there would be a need for each program to have a great deal of technical support and implement a new program altogether. I didn't feel that it was going to be as complicated or as costly as all of that. I know that they estimated it to be about $5,000 to $10,000 for each program. I also believe that there was somewhere implied there were about 100 of them in the city alone, but I understand that's not accurate. It's closer to 30 programs in Baltimore, I believe.
Okay, yeah, this wasn't necessarily specific to the cost, but just in allowing a third party to certify and issue these ID cards. So I would just at least just suggest that we make sure that MDOT could implement this if we decide to move forward with it.
I'd love to take a look at it and try to work with them over the next several. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor? Senator Benson, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you for that presentation, Senator Carter. Listen, what you're simply asking is that the reduced fare cards be transferred out of the hands of MDOT to the actual place where the people are getting the treatment.
Yes,
So it would make it much easier.
much easier for them to access it. I mean, it's no good to have the program if they can't actually access they don't have the transfer to get to the location to receive the pass.
Okay, so currently, those people have to go to MDOT
Yes.
to get okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to find out. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor? Okay, seeing none. Senator Carter has designated Bilal Ali as her designated number one witness and familiar face. Mr. Ali, former Delegate Ali, you've got 5 minutes because you've been given that prestigious designation by Senator Carter. You get 5 whole minutes.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues for the first step in passing the prior bill that Senator Jill had alluded to. I also want to clarify some misconception, but let me give you a little background about me personally. I'm currently licensed as a licensed clinical alcohol and drug clinician. I'm also dually licensed as a licensed clinical professional counselor. I also have worked in this industry my entire adult life, which is 25 plus years. I think one of the things that we need to refocus on, I know that COVID has been taken front and center, but we are also experiencing an opioid epidemic. The last statistic that I had from 2019, we lost 1,774 deaths in the state of Maryland. The other thing about, I read the letter from MDOT, and what they do not tell you is that MDOT do not initiate the reduced bus fare process. It's the treatment providers who do that. So some of the concerns that I've seen in there about HIPAA and et cetera, all of these are already covered through the protocol that are in place for protected health information. So it's no breach there. The other issue they were saying about potential fraud and et cetera, I think it's almost non-existent of any type of fraud within that process. One of the things that I do want to emphasize that we need more tools in our toolbox to give people access to treatment. Now, this is relevant to OTP programs, which are basically methadone programs. You got to understand that methadone is a synthetic opiate and it's addictive just like regular opiates. So if these people miss a day of having access to treatment, that means that if they don't come on day one, they may not come back on day 2 or day 3. So simplifying the process. I know how large bureaucracies don't like to be agile and adaptive and innovative, but we're living in modern technology now. We're already communicating that initial demographic information that has to go down to MTA. It's just another cumbersome process that the patient, and we know that if we simplify the process, have the patient there, and they don't have to go anywhere to finish that process, then the likely outcome will be a lot greater. The other thing that we have to look at, I understand fiscal note, as every legislators know, that's the first thing you look at. Oh my God, it's $2 million. But do we look at the other associative costs of not having treatment? The only analysis that I can actually think of, we know with the Curran report, if we put money into pre-K, there's a better outcome that student will go on and continue their education. So similarly, if we have a simplified process that we have the patient there that's in compliance, I don't think we need to be creating additional barriers. I think we should be creating more access for people to actually get access to treatment. And with that, I'm going to yield and entertain any questions that you may have, because I'm real familiar with this whole process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee for the witness? Okay, we've got Senator Augustine. Unmute yourself, Senator.
Yeah, I apologize. I actually do. I fully support and want to get folks these cards. Before I came to the state Senate, I was on the WMATA board, and we had a program to certify people for reduced fare, centralized. There was, a lot of review with regard to making sure that there was ADA compliance. I mean, it was just a lot that went into that. Mm-hmm. How do you think that the clinics are going to, and it was risky too, because, for the program as a whole, to make sure that they were maintaining that ADA compliance. How do you think that each kind of clinic will be able to, I don't want to jeopardize the overall program, if you understand what I'm saying, with regard to the record keeping, with regard to just making sure that everything is in place from a compliance standpoint?
Well, I think that the MTA will still be the back office. It's just that some of the mundane things that need to be done in terms of verifying your ID, which they already do, and taking a picture and integrating the system so they can capture the amount of people who are participating in the program. I see it as more simplified, modern process, as opposed to a person has to initially at the program state fill out all the demographic information, verify their ID, and then have to make another special trip downtown when we're dealing with people that basically don't have money to go to the grocery store, or they have other socioeconomic insecurity. They just don't have the money. And more than likely, when you have a population like that, they're not going to go downtown to make another trip when we can simplify that process right there. It's a one-stop shop.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none.
Hey, Senator,
Sorry,
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chair.
I
had a
see
question.
Senator Hayes. Senator Hayes
Oh,
has raised his
oh,
hand.
Senator Hayes, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, welcome back, Delegate Ali, and we appreciate
Thank you.
your advocacy and friendship always. I know it's a little bit different. I'd be curious to work with MDOT and to sponsor a little bit on this. Just as Senator Augustine mentioned, there's a lot of steps in this process, but there are other organizations that handle the distribution of these, of these passes. I know the Department of Social Services often handle the distribution of reduced cards and stuff like that. And so it's not like it's something out of the ordinary. Now, obviously that department is a state agency, but they're already currently in practice, institutions outside of MDOT that are distributing these type of benefits to customers. And given the fact that, substance abuse has been such a plague on Maryland, I would be very curious and very interested in working with the sponsor yourself and this committee to find out ways how we could duplicate that, in this instance as well. But thank you again for bringing this to us, and hopefully you all will accept my invitation to help out in trying to understand.
Oh, absolutely. I think your bill, the HOPE Act, was very instrumental in expanding access to treatment. And I applaud you for that. And I applaud all of my colleagues for understanding what's at stake here. And I think the bigger picture is if we don't do anything, as opposed to allowing these patients to have access to a process that we can simplify, I think that would outweigh any cost that would be incurred by implementing this.
Okay, any additional questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, we've got, thank you for your testimony, Delegate.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fromm.
Yeah, so we've got one final witness, Wayne Thompson, and I think Mr. Thompson is signed in under another name. We were having a little difficulty locating him. Mr. Thompson, are you in the house?
I think he's at Mr. Thompson is actually one of the patients who Vice Chair, that testified last year on the initial bill.
Okay.
And I think
he is signed up, but I think he may not be in one of our boxes here under Wayne Thompson. So we'll give it another 30 seconds and hopefully he will unmute himself or put his camera on.
A message a while back that he was in the waiting room. No.
Wait a minute. I'll find out in 1 minute.
That's another 30 seconds. We'll try to locate if he is in the waiting room.
That's good.
Well, if you miss out on this,
well, why don't we do this? Is we may move. He's the final witness for this bill. We may move on to the next bill. If he does show up, we'll let him. We'll find a way to have him do his 2.5 minutes on your bill. Okay. We don't want to hold up the rest of
Is there a Kevin in the waiting room?
Well, he's coming in from some other name. Again.
Okay.
Rev.
Kevin Pfeffer.
Okay. Well, that person's not signed up to testify, Senator, so I'm not sure how to easily rectify this. So I think at this point, what we'll do is I think that will conclude the hearing on this particular bill, Senate Bill 399. And if Mr. Thompson shows up, we'll allow him to kind of weigh in, even if it's a little out of turn. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 399. And we will now turn to Senator Riley on Senate Bill 372. Senator Riley, you've got unlimited time to present your bill.
So thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. It's good to be back with you. Senate Bill 372 is entitled Civil Action, Surety Insurance, and Failure to Act in Good Faith. Now, over the years on the Finance Committee, we've talked a lot about automobile and homeowner and health insurance. This is a very narrow, specific type of insurance, surety insurance. It basically requires an insurance company to guarantee that a project will be completed. And if the general contractor doesn't finish it, the insurance company has to make arrangements for somebody else to come in and finish generally a large government or commercial contract. Over the years, there's been some problems with insurance companies stalling, dragging this process out. On the fiscal note, it says it very, very succinctly. The bill adds obligee claims under surety insurance policies, the statutory provisions authorizing the recovery of actual damages against insurers, insurance companies, if the insurer failed to act in good faith under certain circumstances. So this is pretty different than the normal run-of-the-mill insurance coverages that we have. We have two very qualified witnesses, Mr. Vice Chairman, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to. The first one is Brian Jablon, an attorney, and after him, William Moore, a contractor. So I'd like to turn the hearing over to Brian.
Okay, before we go to you, Mr. Jablon, we're going to ask if there are any questions for the sponsor for Senator Riley. Okay, seeing none. Okay, Mr. Jablon, you as the designated #1 witness for Senator Riley get a full 5 minutes to testify.
Very well, thank you, Vice Chairman and members of the committee and Senator Riley. Brian Jablon, I'm an attorney, has been practicing construction law probably 30 years. My office is in Severna Park, and my practice really is representing general contractors and subcontractors on commercial projects in the construction industry. And as such, I've been dealing with, over the years, insurance companies that sell this product called surety. Under the insurance code, surety is defined as an insurance product. And specifically what we're talking here is performance surety. That is the type of surety that insures against the casualty of the contractor not performing. The insurance code specifically states that surety insurance includes insurance that guarantees the performance of insurance contracts. And so what happens is an insurance company issues these policies, and I'll use the example of my client. I represent Southway generally, and Mr. Moore will be testifying on behalf of Southway. But what happens is Southway asks its subcontractors to provide a performance bond surety policy to protect Southway in the event that the subcontractor does not perform. And the insurance policy, in essence, has three parties involved. One is the insurance company, the surety. The second is the insurance company's principal, which would in this case be the subcontractor. The subcontractor and the surety bind themselves under the insurance policy, jointly and severally, to what's called the obligee, the person to whom the obligation is owed. In this case, it would be the general contractor. And so what happens is the performance bond comes into play when the surety when the principal doesn't perform or in essence goes under. And I'll address that particular issue in a bit. The experience that I've had and the experience that Mr. Moore and Southway have had and other of my clients have had is that sureties don't really make a lot of money on insurance premiums. And when they're called to stand up and perform, what I've been experienced and what Mr. Moore has experienced and other contractors have experienced is that the surety will kind of play its game with the obligee. And one of the games is delay. And the purpose of that game is to, in essence, get a better deal than they would otherwise have had if they didn't delay and they didn't negotiate. So there's no hammer to make the surety perform right away. There's no hammer to assure that the surety acts promptly and within the contract period. Now that's a big problem for my client, for the general contractors, because they're facing liquidated damages. And what the surety does is they say, oh, well, we're investigating, we'll get back to you. And they continue to delay. In the meantime, the general contractor starts suffering liquidated damages. This particular bill provides a hammer against the insurance company to do what it promised to do, to guarantee the casualty of performance. Without this bill, as I said, the insurance company can do what it wants to do. Now, we've added a component of this bill based upon our discussions with various players in the construction industry, that this will apply only where the principal, the contractor, is out of business. So you've got that situation, and the only one that my client can look to is the surety. Now, I'd like to address briefly the argument of the Surety and Fidelity Association of America. They first assert that a surety bond is not an insurance policy. Well, that's simply not true. I read to you from the insurance code that said surety insurance includes performance insurance contracts. The insurance code is right on point, but even more interesting is that the Surety and Fidelity Association of America on their own website state that suretyship is a very specialized line of insurance, and then says, what are the characteristics of suretyship, like more common forms of insurance? So they admit that point. The second thing that they assert is that, and I told you that it's a kind of a three-party instrument. You've got the insurance company, you've got its principal, and you've got the obligee, which is my client. What surety say is that, well, we've got a three-party instrument and we owe a duty to both our principal and to the obligee. And if you have this penalty against us, we're going to short shrift the principal. Well, number one, that's not the case, because both the principal and the surety have the obligation to the obligee, and the surety promises that it will be fair and reasonable and investigate. All we're asking is that the surety be bound to that. The other issue is that we have amended, we have provided this bill. Originally it provided all performance sureties. Now it's only performance sureties where the principal is out of business. So that issue of the duty to the principal is no longer an issue on this bill. It is very important in private industry and in public contracts. Is that my time?
Okay, Mr. Jalan, if you could just wrap up. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I'll wrap up.
I'll let you finish your sentence there.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chairman. It is incredibly important, not only in private contracts, but contracts with the state, that contractors complete timely. And if the general contractor has subcontractors who are out of business and the surety won't perform, you're going to have, and I think you've had in the past, some real issues with completion that cost the citizens of the state substantial dollars. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
We've got Senator Kramer. Senator Kramer.
Thank you. So let me ask you this question, Brian, so I fully understand. As drafted now, the bill is limited only to a general contractor and subcontractors. It doesn't relate to surety between owner and GC. Is that as I understand it? And if not, why not?
Yeah, Your Honor, Senator Kramer used to say, in Your Honor, I'll call you Your Honor. So it does apply to any performance bond. So the situation where the owner has a performance bond with a general contractor, it applies to that situation. My particular client is a large general contractor, so he's in favor of the bill because he has to get surety, especially under state contracts. He's got to get surety from his subcontractors. So it applies to both.
And that's what I was, because I couldn't find in the bill, and you were making reference to this GC subcontractor, and I was trying to find where it did to that. So it has that broader application. Now, you said there's an amendment, though, that would again limit to a GC that went out of business. How does that then offer greater protections, owner, GC? How does that
So,
Explain that.
Senator Kramer, we wanted the bill to be broader, but in discussions with other groups, we in essence conceded that we would make the bill more limited. So the bill, I believe that the bill should apply broadly, but as a result of that discussion with various groups, we decided to limit the bill to the situation where if it's an owner, it's a government owner, and the general contractor has gone under, then this bill applies to the surety. General contractor is gone, and same as going down the line. The reason for that was discussions with other groups. I'd much rather, and my client would much rather, have it be broader.
So it's not just regard to performance failures. There has to be the entity no longer exists. And all right, your head's nodding, so I assume I've got that right. But the consequence of that loss of additional protection was, I guess, to reduce opposition from the other side and facilitate the bill's success. Is that successful in reducing?
Hey, thank you.
Other side?
Yeah, Senator Kramer, we did not enter these negotiations with the other side. There are various types of contractors. So you have a general contractor, you have the subcontractors. So there are all kinds of interests going on. And this was basically a middle of the road. As I said, it would be nice for my client if it was broader. It would be nice for the government if it was broader, but that's where we are today with this bill.
All right, I will leave it at that. Thank you very kindly.
I would note there's still unfavorable testimony here, so whoever you talked to wasn't clearly to everybody. We welcome back Chair Kelly. Chair Kelly, do you want me to finish this hearing, or do you?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Okay. So any more questions for Mr. Jablon before we go to the next witness? Okay, seeing none. Next witness signed up is William Moore, who has signed up favorable. Mr. Moore, you get 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. Appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us on this bill. Just a couple points that I wanted to add that Brian had made is that, and I appreciate Senator Kramer, your question, because yes, so we as a general contractor, it's interesting because we are allowing this bill to have the same impact on us as we would be expecting on subcontractors, because we pay for bonds from subcontractors and we provide them to our clients who are owners. And those owners could be the state of Maryland, any jurisdictions, or private clients as well. So we're not imposing upon a law upon somebody that we aren't doing to ourselves as well. I guess another point of note in my short time is that I believe, Mr. Jablon can clarify, but I believe there are 11 other states that have bad faith laws on their books. The most stringent is Georgia, and I believe that we tried to be, as Brian noted, as agreeable as possible to, this would be one of the weaker bills of those 11 states. And lastly, I want to emphasize that this bill would do nothing and have zero impact on good players, those bonding companies who act in good faith and do what they are paid to do so. This bill only provides a hammer for those who are acting in bad faith, who intentionally obfuscate and use the courts specifically to their advantage to delay the process and ultimately try to save themselves money. So thank you all for your time. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Mr. Vice Chair, one last comment.
Any questions? I'm sorry.
Vice Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, go on, Senator.
The changes that Mr. Jablon was talking about were incorporated, and we had submitted this bill last year. His changes are incorporated in the bill we submitted, but there is one amendment which we offer, and that's to exclude payment surety bonds. So that's off the table as the request of some of the other folks who might have had some objections. And that's offered in good faith, and would hope that the committee would accept my amendment to that effect.
Okay. Any, back to our witness, Mr. Moore. Any questions for Mr. Moore from any of the committee members? Okay, don't see any. We're going to go to the unfavorables. We've got 3 witnesses signed up on favorable. We're going to start with Nancy Egan. Nancy, are you in the house here? Nancy Egan.
My apologies, sorry.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
Hi,
Nancy
everyone.
Egan.
Good morning.
Nancy, you got, just to be clear, you get 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nancy Egan. I represent the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We are 1,200 insurers, and in combination, we write 60% of the U.S. property casualty market and 77.3% of the surety market in Maryland. And I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this bill, and we are in opposition. And unfortunately, while I was in opposition last year, I did not receive copies of the amendments. So I'm unable to discuss those amendments at this time because I don't have the chance to review them. But I just want to review what this does. It excludes surety contracts. It removes the exclusion for insurance contracts from the scope of the Unfair Claims Settlement Practice Act and makes that line subject to the Unfair Claims Settlement Practice Act. And that would mean that currently those type of claims are only first-party claims. So this now would impose this on to third-party claims, which would be a big shift in the current law. Surety guarantees to pay the contractual obligations of the purchaser to a third party, subject to the right of the surety to be reimbursed by the purchaser of the surety agreement. Our prior people went over what a surety contract is, but I'd like to address the fact that in the Maryland Insurance Administration's testimony, they sort of clarified the difference between a normal indemnity insurance contract, the idea that you have for homeowners or for an auto policy, where you expect the insured to indemnify or keep you whole in case you are sued or you have a loss. This is actually a 3-part obligation between either the general contractor or the owner, then the principal that's guaranteed to perform, and then the surety that is financially guaranteeing that the principal will perform. So it's a little bit different type of contract than what you're normally seeing under an insurance contract. So if we refer to the Insurance Administration's testimony, you'll see they've made that difference. That when the NAIC came up with the Unfair Claims Settlement Practice Act, they specifically excluded sureties, workman's comp, and reinsurance contracts. The MIA has put that out into their testimony, saying workman's comp subject to the Workman's Comp Commission. The other is the reinsurance. They're very complex contracts between 2 parties. And the third is surety, because this is more of a financial guarantee, not as it is now. It makes 2 changes. So it's very important that it's going to change the Unfair Claims Settlement Practice Acts from first party review to also include a third-party principal, which could mean that this could be extended to other things. And the other thing is that this will just add another layer of a review, this time by the MIA, which could delay the performance of the contract. And with that, I hope that you give it an unfavorable review. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Egan? Senator Kramer.
Hi, Senator Kramer.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to see everyone.
Good to see you. Nancy, the point you're making is that, okay, it's this first party claims. That's the only place we've ever had the Unfair Claims, Practices Act. But I think what you're also saying is that by the very nature of surety, it pulls in a third party. That's what surety is. So it sounds like your concern is that we're, going to perhaps be taking that first gingerly, step onto the slippery slope, but we're constantly making decisions as members of the legislature as to, what's the slippery slope and how far we're going to go. But pretty much every time we look at legislation, it involves the slippery slope. So, I don't think there's getting any, you can't get around the nature of surety and the third party nature. But if that's the only logic for not passing the bill, I think, it should be simply, hey, there is this issue. And, I would also say that the final comment about involving the MIA may create additional delay, and the surety industry is looking to, make sure these claims are made good really, quickly. Is we're not hearing that from the people who are impacted and out there in the real world. I guess if the issue is, do I understand correctly, it's more about the slippery slope, and if we open the door here,
Senator Kramer, first of all, I would think it's both. I know that the Insurance Administration in their testimony said, if you come to them with a complaint, they will look at it. But the problem is it's still going to be something that's going to have to be adjudicated for them to look at. And what they're trying to say is this is really a contractual dispute. And what we're trying to do is impose the MIA in the middle of a contractual dispute, because the parties are saying you didn't perform and the other party is saying I did perform. So you're putting the MIA right in the middle of a contractual dispute about performance.
Yeah,
and that gets a little bit different than your usual. Did the insurer pay the correct amount on a homeowner's policy? And one of the things that are under the fiscal note, it talks about the courts and procedures thing and what the MIA would be looking at. And they're saying that, it's not bad faith if a insurance company takes its time to really investigate a claim. That is not bad faith if they are trying to take time to understand what is causing the delay or about the performance. They obviously need to investigate because they are financially obligated to perform on the contract.
I understand, but I think it's also about incentive to get the insurance company to quote unquote do their investigation. And we know that that is where the problem lies. That is where the entity that paid the premium to have this insurance protection now says, wait a minute, we paid the premium, we need you to make good, and we get it, but we also know the industry can then drag the process out to delay and defer, and then hopefully at the end of the day, I'm assuming, negotiate out something that is less than what they were paid to do. But with that, thank you, and it's good to see you, Nancy.
Thank you, Senator Kramer.
Okay, any additional questions for Ms. Egan? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the next witness, which is Andrew Kirkner. Mr. Kirkner, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Andrew Kirkner on behalf of the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. Very happy to be back before the committee today, albeit in a virtual setting. NAMIC is comprised of more than 1,400 member companies across the country, with 11 of those companies based in Maryland. I want to echo some of the points that Ms. Egan just made, but I want to make a few new ones as well. With great respect to the sponsor, we are asking for an unfavorable report on 372, as it will increase the cost of surety insurance and lead to a less efficient surety insurance process. You've heard a really, I think, robust discussion, an overview of what surety insurance is. And I don't take any issue with the description that you've been given. It's sort of to circle back to a question that Senator Kramer asked. It is sort of this middle ground between a first party and a third party obligation. I think Mr. Jablon, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, I think he gave a very accurate and good overview of that. So it is sort of a middle ground between a first party and a third party obligation. I think what you also heard from Mr. Jablon, which was spot on, is what the actual intent of this bill is. and that is a hammer. I appreciate the honesty and the respect of saying that out loud, because this bill is intended as leverage to make insurers, surety insurers, pay out more quickly. I think there are problems with that approach. The first one I would say is we do have this balance in surety insurance between the obligee and the person that takes out the surety bond, right? The insurance company obviously has a responsibility to the person that takes out the surety insurance to reasonably investigate a claim. I think the problem is, and the idea that this would only hurt good actors, is if you look to the language of the bill and the bad faith standard in Maryland and in most states, it inserts words like reasonable investigation. If we had a perfect civil justice system in which every judge and every jury saw what reasonable investigations were across the board, that might very well be an appropriate standard to apply here. We don't. And that does insert ambiguity into the process. So I see my time is running short. Mr. Vice Chair, I would just conclude by saying this bill would tip the scales and would tip the scales against the parties that take out these surety bonds. And for that reason, we think it is an inappropriate and costly measure. Certainly happy to answer any questions that the committee might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Kirkner? Okay, doesn't appear that there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any. So we're going to go back. I inadvertently skipped over Adam Brackenmeyer, who is also signed up unfavorable. Mr. Brackenmeyer, you have 2.5 minutes. And again, you signed up unfavorable.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Adam Brockmeyer. I'm with the Surety and Fidelity Association of America, testifying unfavorable today on Senate Bill 372. We've already made a number of points that surety is a relationship among three parties. And because of that, you have three parties, generally two contracts, and you're going to have a longer claim process. And if this bill becomes law, we guarantee that there are going to be a number of lawsuits against sureties who are just doing their due diligence. Some may believe that they are dragging out the claims process, but this bill enables more bad faith lawsuits to be used against surety companies. And we expect those types of lawsuits to be filed against companies every time there's a claim or disagreement with the claim. During the claims process, surety companies frequently are arbiters of facts. They're working with their clients and with the client of the client, frequently a state or a county or a municipality, and trying to determine what has happened. Because the two parties that we step into the, let's call it court with, may not agree on the facts, and that will take time. Second piece I'd like to point out is sureties will insure, let's say, an intersection project, a 20-mile stretch of highway. The complexity of the project may be exponentially larger, and this bill doesn't allow for the complexity of the project and for the length of investigation that may be necessary to determine what the facts are and determine if payment shall be made. With that, I would also point out that the practical effect for companies seeking bonds is that surety companies may tighten their underwriting standards, and we're concerned that the number of contractors that would be looking for public contracts that may narrow because companies may tighten their underwriting standards. So we want to see a larger playing field for all the contractors, and I think this bill would take us in that opposite direction. For those points, we opposed Senate Bill 372, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness, Senator Kramer?
This one will be quick. Adam, you made mention to the complexity of a particular project, and it might take a little more effort to interpret and diagnose what the problems were. Would the complexity of that project and its value not also affect the premium that the industry will be charging to provide the insurance coverage? Would that not be a relatively accurate statement?
The premium and the risk, sir, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the final witness on this bill, and that's Jack Andrzejak. Mr. Andrzejak, I do believe you're here in the room.
Yes, sir.
Jack, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Jack Andrzak. I'm before you today on behalf of Travelers Insurance Company, which is the largest writer of surety coverage in Maryland. We are opposed to this bill. I'm not going to restate the testimony written and oral of my colleagues as to why surety is excluded from the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act and the failure to act in good faith statute, other than to say this has been the public policy of Maryland for the last 25 years since these enactments were put into law. What I will also reference, though, is the written testimony of the Maryland Insurance Administration that explains the reason that the General Assembly enacted these statutes, why they enacted them with this exclusion, and why that is good public policy. This bill before you today is brought because of some disputes between general contractors and their generally smaller subcontractors. The surety doesn't necessarily know all the reasons for this dispute, but the general contractor really is looking to have the surety to intervene. And this puts the surety in a very difficult position, because if it sides with the general contractor and pays the claim, the surety will have to, the subcontractor has to reimburse the surety. If in fact, if the surety does not side with the contractor, we'll be faced with the possibility of a regulatory action or a action under the good faith statute in tort. There's not really any testimony that there's a widespread problem that we're looking to address here. We do have some, the MIA would tell you that they get 1 or 2 inquiries about surety a month. That is not a widespread problem. The way the sureties respond to obligees in the state, it works very well and is not something that's complained about. You don't hear, the legislature, do not hear from procurement officers for the state or the procurement officers of other public bodies about poor performance by sureties. Sureties are doing what they're supposed to do under the bonds. I'm not here to say that there may not be disputes between the general contractors and the subs. However, the contractors have other remedies. And as you know, general contractors have a great deal of leverage over subcontractors that they hire to work on their projects. These statutes to include this, expanding these statutes to include obligees under surety bonds when the statutes were in fact enacted to protect first party policy.
Time is expired.
Okay, Jack, why don't you wrap up?
Earlier, we urge an unfavorable report. The bill is not necessary.
Okay, thank you for that testimony. Committee members, any questions, Mr. Andrzak? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 372. And we're going to turn to Senator Hester for Senate Bill 412. And Senator, as the sponsor, under our rules, you get unlimited time to explain your bill. We're very generous.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Chair Kelly and members of the esteemed Senate Finance Committee. I'll try to be as short as I can. For the record, Senator Katie Fry Hester presenting SB 412 as the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Cyber, IT, and Biotech, on which Senator Jennings and Senator Hershey also serve along with me. Great to see both of you. You may recall that this bill received a very robust hearing last year. However, with session cut short, we did not receive a vote in this committee or in the House. This is a really important consumer protection bill. For any of you who have bought a car, a smartphone, or almost any other product with electronic components in the recent past, you are aware of just how complicated our technology has become. Even simple repairs require specialized diagnostic tools, replacement parts, and equipment. Increasingly, electronics manufacturers are using this reality of our evolving technology to block access to repair, making it difficult or impossible for consumers to fix their own products. In effect, the manufacturer maintains a de facto monopoly on repairs. In my testimony, there's a link to excellent reporting by the Business Insider, which outlines which outlines how manufacturer repair monopolies have frustrated hospital staff, drove up the cost of healthcare equipment maintenance, and have slowed the repair of ventilators during COVID-19 pandemic. And that's just really, really bad news. This bill addresses these problems by requiring original equipment manufacturers to provide independent repair providers with documentation, tools, and other necessary information to repair the product at a fair price. This would increase the longevity of equipment that all of us use and prevent equipment manufacturers from shutting repair providers out of the marketplace. This legislation is modeled after a Massachusetts law, which passed by ballot initiative in 2012 to require the vehicle owners and independent repair facilities have access to adequate vehicle diagnostics and repair information. After that law went into effect, car manufacturers and independent repair shops voluntarily entered a national agreement in line with the Massachusetts law. So essentially, this means this policy has been in effect in Maryland since 2014 for the auto industry, require the vehicle owners and independent to the benefit of all Maryland consumers and businesses. This bill intends to apply that same model to consumer electronics and equipment, extending the right to repair to a broader range of products. I will note that some members of the industry are voluntarily already moving in this direction, but others are lagging behind. This legislation keeps the industry moving at a steady pace towards these goals for the benefit of all our constituents. As you will see in the accompanying testimony, this legislation touches a wide array of products, consumers, and marketplaces. Included in the testimony are examples from independent technicians who have struggled to get the resources necessary to repair everyday consumer electronic devices, and farmers who have been unable to repair their agricultural equipment because of a lack of willingness on the part of manufacturers to share those tools. You will also see testimony submitted by the Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection Division that the opposition's objections on the grounds that this bill would cause harm to intellectual property rights of manufacturers, warranty agreements, consumer privacy, and overall security are, quote, without foundation. I'd also like to point out on this bill that both the Farm Bureau and environmental groups like the Maryland PIRG and Sierra Club and HOCO Indivisible are in support of this bill. By passing this legislation, we can make the consumption of manufactured goods more sustainable, the ability to repair more accessible, and the repair market as a whole more competitive. On behalf of Maryland's consumers and citizens, I respectfully urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 412.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Hester, the sponsor? Okay, I don't see any. We're going to move to your designated number one witness, Emily Scarr. And with that designation, she is entitled to 5 minutes of testimony. Ms. Scarr?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chairman, Chair Kelly. My name is Emily Scarr. I'm the Director of Maryland PIRG, the statewide consumer group with grassroots members across the state. We support SB 412, or as I like to call it, just Let Us Fix Our Stuff Act. Last year, as folks will recall, this bill was heard on March 11th. It was my last public appearance before going into lockdown with my husband and toddlers. See everyone again. But as the COVID-19 pandemic laid bare over the last year, repair rights affect all aspects of our lives. I hate to do this, but let's think back to March. Our school is shut down. We all shifted to remote work wherever possible. And as we became increasingly dependent on our devices, our laptops, our computers. We pulled them out from our closet so that our kids could go to school while we worked. Meanwhile, the big box stores where we buy these things or repair these things, they closed. The Apple stores were all closed. So you're going to hear from opposition to this bill that the status quo is working, that there is no problem needing to be addressed. But we should all just go to, authorized repair technicians or to their stores themselves. But when they're closed, what are we supposed to do? Have our kids miss a month of school while we're waiting for a mail-in repair of the laptop? Or a new laptop with the money we don't have? Many Maryland homes don't have multiple devices, so each person in the family has their own. So when we shifted to e-learning and remote work, People were scrambling. Schools were scrambling to get devices repaired and workable for students. Families were scrambling. Those who did have money couldn't even buy a new one because the supply chain was backed up and neither could our school. So and here's why right to repair is important. It means consumers have more options. Local repair shops were able to find ways to do curbside pickup and appointment drop-offs during the pandemic. I even managed to get a broken cell phone screen fixed before my kids woke up from their nap. But if it had been a different type of problem, like a charging port, for example, the repair shops might not have been able to fix it. For so many repairs, they don't have access to the parts, manuals, and software they need to be able to do these repairs. They can fix a screen, but that doesn't mean they can do everything you need. So expanding repair also means low-cost refurbished devices can work longer and serve as a key element to bridging the digital divide. In fact, Maryland PIRG released a study just last month that estimated that repair could save Maryland families an average of $330 per year, which would save $735 million across our 2.2 million households. And not only would we save money, we'd also be increasing spending in a local, sustainable repair economy instead of pumping money into out-of-state companies and overseas manufacturers. Local options are also critical for our healthcare. The same restrictions that shut down the big box stores prevented manufacturers from sending their traveling technicians to hospitals across the country to manage their ventilators and other life-saving equipment. While these same manufacturers refuse to make access to that information available to the hospital-based repair experts to fix that equipment. Maryland Treasurer Nancy Kopp joined our call pushing for access to those repair information. And we finally convinced some of the manufacturers to share some of the information, but we shouldn't have to play whack-a-mole with repair during a pandemic. It took state legislators in Massachusetts passing a law to get this issue addressed for cars, as Senator Hester mentioned. And it's going to take a law to get these manufacturers to follow suit. Downtime for ventilators in a flu-like pandemic should not have happened. Pricey service contracts for hospitals is harmful, especially for our rural hospitals who struggle in that kind of squeeze. And as you hear from Colby, I think if he's able to join us, downtime for a farmer could cost them the season. This solution is common sense. With greater access to repair, Marylanders can get their devices running longer, saving them money while putting more money back into a local recirculating economy instead of going overseas. It will also reduce the burden of electronic waste and our ever-growing waste stream. You're going to hear a lot of concerns from unfavorable testimony, so you want to be clear. The intention of this bill is not to jeopardize copyrights or grant any access to source code, intellectual property, pollution controls, or create any additional liability risks. They made the same arguments for car repair and none of it has happened. So we are working on some technical amendments to make that even more crystal clear. We're working on an amendment to exempt leased equipment for things like routers. And we definitely don't want any information or tools that they don't already give to their local technicians and dealers. And we don't even want them to give it away free. We're just asking for reasonable access. Concern about repair restrictions is not going away. So we hope you decide to move the ball forward this year on policy to strengthen consumer protections. Bottom line, Maryland PIRG just wants more Marylanders to be able to repair more of the products that we've purchased. So we respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Scar, for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Okay, I've got Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily, I was just wondering if you could mention what that technical amendment might look like that would be protecting intellectual property rights.
Yeah, there's this one line that there's a lot of pushback for about, you don't have to release this information unless it's, I can pull it up, hold on. I don't think they've worked out that amendment, but that's one thing that's been a particular sticking point I've heard. There's been, some of the experts were concerned that that line should be in there because it prevents manufacturers from hiding behind the trade secrets when they don't really need to give one up. But I think we're open to adjusting that. I can pull up the exact line if you want me to give me a second.
I thought you might have done it already. If you haven't, I'm sure the committee staff will get that for us.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure it was being addressed.
Totally, absolutely.
Okay, we'll deal with it at the appropriate time. Any additional questions for Ms. Scar? Okay, I don't see any. We're going to go to the next witness is Gay Gordon Byrne from the Repair Association. Okay, Ms. Gordon Byrne, you are up and you have 2.5 minutes. You got to unmute yourself though. Okay, you got to still work at that unmute. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, a little tiny button and the wrong glasses.
Okay, so you got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Gay Gordon Byrne. I'm the Executive Director of the Repair Association. We are the people that fix the stuff pretty much everywhere from cradle to grave. So hopefully, if you have any questions, I'll be able to answer them for you. The bill itself is really about restoring the relationship of owners to their purchases. When you go to a store and you buy something, it really is yours, unless you have the misfortune of clicking on an agreement that takes away those rights. And those are very common in the little end user license agreements that everybody thinks, oh, I have to accept this. Well, unfortunately, those agreements are set up to remove pretty much all the rights you had when you started out. So just to keep that in context and leverage off of what Emily had said, there's nothing that this bill does that does anything to existing federal law. There's no changes to copyright. There's no changes to patent. There's no changes to trade secrets. There's no changes to emissions law, to any form of safety law. All of that is what we're just doing is trying to make sure that there's a competitive option for repair at the direction of the owner. And that means that you've got to be able to fix your stuff. And we need a level of cooperation from manufacturers that is variable. Specifically, we need to make sure that people who the customers of these organizations, that they can buy spare parts, that they can buy the tools, the diagnostics, and the firmware that is necessary for repair. And through the law of agency, obviously, it needs to be able to assign an agent, such as an independent repair technician, to be able to do the work. Service materials by themselves never include trade secrets, because if they did, it would hamper the OEM from even hiring anybody to do work for them using that service documentation. They will have given up their secrets because it's now distributed. The same thing goes for cybersecurity, because if you put a secret in a piece of information that's distributed, it's not a secret anymore, and that would also be not a very secure way to go about securing your equipment. So those two things are they're brought up a lot as problems, but they really are problems that are at the making of the manufacturer. Let's see. Safety ultimately is up to you as the equipment owner. If you do stuff that's unsafe, that's on you. And every contract I've ever seen says that, hey, Mr. Customer, if you do X, Y, Z, we're not responsible for that, up to the fact that you can lose money, you can lose crops, you can lose a limb, and we're not responsible. That's standard contract documentation that protects the manufacturers from, may not protect them from frivolous lawsuits, but ultimately it does protect them from legal liability, which is under the control of the Maryland legislature. Nothing about this bill changes any of those items of liability. Let's see. One of the bigger problems, back to the EULA, is that the end user license agreements, is that you as a consumer have no capability of negotiating these agreements. And so these end user license agreements that are so common, they are almost exactly the perfect description for unfair, deceptive acts and practices, which is why the bill is looking at consumer protection law, because that's the law that would prevent consumers from being taken to the cleaners by these agreements. And I saw an article very recently in the New York Times that said, oh, they read some of these agreements and they're so long that people have even put jokes in them to see if anybody reads them. And the fact is, consumers don't read them because they can't negotiate them. Even if they wanted to, they're in an unfair position. I mean, could you, even as a state senator, tell Apple that this is unfair and you don't want to sign this agreement? I don't think so. So many of these problems are really common sense problems. A lot of the questions that we've seen have failed to provide any evidence, especially in the concerns that by withholding basic repair documentation, that consumers are somehow safer. By
Time has expired.
Okay, well, I was on my last sentence, so I'm good.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none. Next up, and actually just in the nick of time, I know Colby Ferguson was stuck over in the House testifying, but he just showed up just in time to weigh in. So Ms. Colby, why don't, you've got 2.5 minutes and you've signed up favorable. So your 2.5 minutes starts right now.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, Colby Ferguson on behalf of Maryland Farm Bureau. And yes, I didn't have to run from one side of the road to the other side of the road this time, just had to click from one Zoom meeting to the other. But yes, we come in support of Senate Bill 412, Consumer Right to Repair. This bill is very comprehensive, as you've probably already heard, and I'm sure you'll hear with in oppositions of this bill as well. But the reason that we're in here is really to focus on the farm equipment side. And honestly, we have worked very closely with the equipment dealers over the last, this past in 2020, to try to come up with ways to address the concerns that farmers have with right to repair. And really what it comes right down to, they have been over backwards and did so many things. We've got the diagnostic tool now. We have the ability to order the part ourselves. We can install the parts if you have the capabilities. Over my shoulder is a combine. I'm not actually in my barn, just a nice pretty picture, but just to kind of show the farm equipment that we use. And if you have the technical experience to be able to use and work on this piece of equipment, you should have the ability. If you pay $500,000 for that piece of equipment behind me, you should be able to work on it yourself and fix it. The challenge that we have is that the very last mile piece is the parts pairing the new part to the computer, and what they call flashing the computer, flashing the system. And the equipment dealers are just not willing to let go of that. We have it in the auto industry. We have it in our farm tractor trailers, but when it comes right down to it, we don't have it on our farm equipment. And so I did sign up favorable with some amendments, and it's really clarifying because we want to make sure we don't do a right to tamper. We're actually just looking to repair. And in my written testimony, I won't go into the components of it, but it really focuses on making sure the proprietary embedded software is not being tampered or accessed, as well as some of the issues with emissions that are federally regulated. So with that, we would support this bill and can entertain some questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Any questions for the witness, Colby Ferguson?
So, Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, we've got Senator Reedy. Senator Reedy.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if the hand was up right. Colby, thanks for being here today. I've been looking at this bill and honestly had meetings with people on kind of all sides of this issue recently. And I have a constituent that's talked to me about this issue before too. So one of the big concerns, as you talked about in your testimony, it's been talked about, is the proprietary, being able to get in and see proprietary technology, because sometimes the computer system relates with something else in the machine or in the computer or whatever the technology is. And in order to get access to that, you could then see that proprietary technology, or at least some of it. Do you think is that an issue with these combines and farm equipment, or is that something that the technical amendment you're talking about could take care of?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the amendment that I put in there, subsection D, is basically does not include the ability to download or access the source code of any proprietary embedded software or code. All we want to do is the right to repair. We don't want to have the right to rebuild one of these things or even have the ability to do it. The biggest problem we have is honestly that computer system, which in some cases has 10 to 12 computers in one piece of equipment. And when you have one little piece go out on a motherboard and you go and you replace that component, it's like a blank hard drive that basically has to be paired to the rest of the system. And that diagnostic is just not allowed. And we do it in cars, we do it in private groups can do it. Matter of fact, we have farmers that will go and have a Kenmore tractor trailer with a Kenmore engine in it, and they'll go get the laptop from the dealer, come out, repair the truck, so the dealer doesn't have to come out and work on that piece of equipment. We just don't have that opportunity in the farm equipment now.
looking at how broad this bill is, I think there are some legitimate concerns from other industries about access. I get what you're saying. I've spent a very little bit of time in some of these combines and seen how complex and amazing they are, really. So, I understand the challenge. So, I mean, is there a way? Would your amendments be? I guess I'm trying to figure out how we could separate out so that things like a combine or a tractor or other types of machinery, we want to clarify, but then maybe for more complex computer systems, is your amendment, is it trying to address everything in the bill, or is it mostly focused on the industry, on your side of the industry?
Well, I pulled my stuff. Nebraska has a piece of legislation in right now that's specifically for farm equipment, and I actually pulled that language from theirs to address what the equipment dealers were having their major concerns, because it's not just proprietary. It's talking about a lot of those engine control units, a lot of the affecting emissions and safety compliance that are required, and so that amendment gets into that piece of that. So I agree with you. Is this bill pretty complicated? Yes, it goes from cell phones to a combine. So I mean, every digital piece in the middle. And I guess what my thing would be is if you wanted to fence line this component, it would be to look at the automobile section or the auto industry section and probably align it there.
Okay. Thanks for your answers. And it's an important issue. Just trying to figure out kind of where we need to draw the line in some of these things. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Senator Reedy. Any additional questions for Mr. Ferguson? Okay, seeing none. The final witness on the favorable panel is Steve Sakamoto-Wangle from the Attorney General's office. Steve?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Steve Sakamoto-Wangle on behalf of the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office. Here in support of Senate Bill 412, I want to thank Senator Hester for introducing this bill, which we think is an important consumer measure that would both increase competition and lower prices for consumers who need repairs to their products and devices. As was mentioned, this has been the case in the auto industry for quite a number of years, where I don't have to go to my dealer for repairs. And if, I trust Senator Kramer's repair shop to do repairs because I've got a good relationship with Senator Kramer, and I know that he'll do a good job and he won't charge me the same amount that I have to pay to get my car repaired at the dealer, I can go to Senator Kramer's repair shop. And this would allow me to do the same with my iPhone or with other products where the manufacturer right now has restrictions that would prevent me from being able to go to an independent repair shop and require me to go to only an authorized dealer. And it just requires them to make available on fair and reasonable terms the same instructions, the same tools, the same equipment they make available to the authorized dealers. Isn't requiring them to give them anything that they're not giving to an authorized repair facility. So we would urge a favorable report on this bill. We do think it's important for consumers, especially in this time when people are restricted to where they can go and to get their repairs done. So we would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sakamoto-Wangle? Okay, seeing none, we're going to now move to, we've got 3 witnesses signed up unfavorable. We're going to start with Larry Albert. Mr. Albert. Mr. Albert, you have, you can unmute yourself and you got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. My name is Larry Albert. I'm a Director of Safety Compliance for Stanley Black & Decker for North America, whose power tool business has been headquartered in Maryland for over 100 years. We have many recognizable brands in the power tool marketplace: Black & Decker, Craftsman, DeWalt, Bostitch, and a number of others. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today on this important issue. Power tools and electric outdoor power equipment provide important utility to construction and landscape professionals, tradesmen, and homeowners, but as with most machinery, present potential risks of injury if this machinery were to malfunction. Our company, along with other power tool companies have made safety of power tools a priority through our activities at a trade association levels and with longstanding involvements in the promulgation of product safety standards, both nationally and internationally. I'm here today to voice my opposition to Senate Bill 412 because if enacted, I believe that this bill has the potential to open the door to tampering of electronic controls of power tools and electric outdoor power equipment that could lead to injury. Today's modern machinery is increasingly dependent on the proper functioning of electronic control modules, which further depend upon embedded software to operate safely. Providing information publicly that would allow individuals to modify these modules, either in hardware or software, opens the door to dangerous malfunctioning of this equipment. Repair, which is the restoration of equipment to its correct operational state, is important to owners of equipment as a means of deriving the full service life out of their investment. Our company and most other power tool companies sell replacement parts and assemblies to the public and independent service departments that are the same as those available to our authorized repair network. What we do not provide is the codes, schematics, and construction details, which comprise the engineering details that are developed during the design of the tool. We're not opposed to the repair of our products either by our network of company service personnel or through the sale of replacement parts and assemblies to individuals and organizations that possess the qualifications to service these products themselves. Equipment owners' access to repair parts has not been an issue for our users and is generally not an issue in our industry. We are, however, opposed to providing details of the design of electronics and software that are not replacement parts and not needed to repair the equipment. Schematics and software developed by product engineering are integrated into the electronic control modules during manufacturing. We are also members of several trade associations, Power Tool Institute, the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute, and the Rechargeable Battery Association. These trade associations have joined many others as part of a coalition in expressing their support for the repair of their products, but opposition to providing access to embedded software and control electronics design that invites tampering of critical safety systems and machinery that can lead to serious injury. For all these reasons and others, this bill takes us in the wrong direction of product safety and seeks to address a problem that doesn't exist with respect to the availability of replacement parts. We urge you to vote in opposition to Senate Bill 412. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Albert? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the next witness. We've got Tara Ryan signed up unfavorable. Tara, you've got designated 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Feldman, and members of the committee. I'm Tara Ryan. I'm with the Entertainment Software Association, and we represent video game console manufacturers and video game publishers and developers. And we're here today also to respectfully oppose Senate Bill 4112. And I just want to make a clarification sort of right out of the gate, because it's interesting. The Massachusetts law has been raised, but nobody has mentioned the fact that it went into litigation in November of 2020. And many of the issues that the car makers raised in their litigation are concerns that I know that ESA has, as well as a lot of members of the coalition that Larry mentioned just a few minutes ago. So I wanted to get that on the record. ESA represents game manufacturers. What I think most people don't know is we're living in the game generation. 75% of US households across the country have at least one gamer at home. We have an economic footprint across all 50 states. In Maryland alone, there are at least 30 companies that manufacture video games or the hardware that go into making video games. And top video games today can cost between tens of millions and 100 million to bring to market, sort of similar to what it takes to bring a blockbuster movie to market. And this bill, as has been mentioned, would require manufacturers to provide the schematics, the diagnostic tools, and things that go into making consoles. Our concern is that this right to repair mandate would pose a high risk to game publishers and other copyright owners who depend on the secure media environment of video game consoles in order to protect the games that are played on them. There's a copyright office in DC. It follows the copyright law, the federal law that protects copyright infringement, but it also protects against the circumvention of copyrighted material. So not only can you not provide tools and diagnostic tools and things that would help circumvent these protected materials. You can't market in that trade either. So we do have concerns that a state law like this would conflict with federal law. And I think that that's something that we have to delve a little bit more deeply into. People are saying that it doesn't interfere with copyright law. We disagree with that. The Copyright Office every 3 years looks at this issue, and every cycle they've decided that there should be no exemption for right to repair video game consoles. They have said in the past that consoles not only protect the integrity of the console code, but the copyrighted works that run on the consoles. And in doing so, they provide important incentives to create video games and other content for consoles, and thus play a critical role in the development and dissemination of highly innovative copyrighted works. So we have inside these consoles these technological protection measures, and these are the things inside the consoles that protect access to the copyrighted material. Our companies are not saying you can't take your console down the road and get it repaired for a supply, a power supply, or a fan, or a USB port. If you do a quick Google search, you can find that a lot of that information is already available. It certainly is available if you make a call to our manufacturers to try to repair some of those things. Our biggest concern is that once you get past those basic repairs, you start getting into space where once you tamper, you can modify. If we had to give these schematics and tools over, you're putting hackers who are far better in the technology space than I am in a place where they can get in and tamper with and circumvent, tamper, and modify the tools that are very much in place to protect against copyrighted infringement and the circumvention. All of the TPMs inside work together to create this protected environment. So once you—
Time has expired.
Thanks.
Okay.
Once you
Yeah,
remove—
why don't you bring it to, why don't you finish up your thought?
Yeah, once you remove one of those protections, you sort of have destroyed the entire protected environment there. So we respectfully encourage the committee to vote against this bill. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tara. Any questions for Ms. Ryan? Okay, I don't see any, which takes us to our final witness on the bill, which is Tim Lambert. Mr. Lambert, see you there. And again, you've got 2.5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Tim Lambert, and I've held various service roles for the Carter Machinery Organization over the course of my 26-year career. Carter Machinery is the cat dealer serving the state of Maryland. We operate over 14 locations in the state with approximately 400 employees. We are strongly opposed to the passage of Senate Bill 412. Caterpillar customers are already given access to many software codes to help them repair their equipment. They can access log diagnostic codes, perform diagnostic tests and calibrations, and monitor their equipment performance in real time. We draw the line, however, providing access to embedded codes that control the safety and federal EPA emissions compliance on our equipment. Given access, they could manipulate the coding to disengage built-in safety features of the machines, such as safety levers on excavators, seat sensors, overload sensors, etc. And we're concerned that access to such codes will invite the tampering of complex engine and hydraulic systems operating near the public. Our power generators also serve as critical backup to hospitals, data centers, and local and state government buildings, and providing access to unqualified personnel could pose a risk to the occupants of those buildings. At Carter Machinery, we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars each year in training our techs. As you know, there's a nationwide shortage of qualified techs, so Carter also invests in several community colleges such as Baltimore County P-Tech, Solars Point, Carroll County Career and Tech, amongst others, in order to maintain a pipeline of qualified students. Carter also has an accredited 15-month training program with the state of Maryland for apprenticeships for students to help fill the void of technicians. Out of an abundance of caution for the public safety and environmental concerns with this legislation, we feel there is no need for right to repair in the construction industry. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lambert? Okay, I don't see any. And with that,
Mr. Vice
Yes,
Chair.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Senator Augustine.
No, I mean, I just have gone, so thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, just having
Yeah.
gone through and listened a little bit, just Sir, have there been any safety issues with the independent car repair that you're aware of? Just because it's been brought up a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Senator Hester, did you hear the question?
I apologize. I think that was for the spot. Senator Hester, did you hear Senator Augustine's? Why don't you reduce?
I did. I thought he was asking the opposition, but there are no instances of safety with independent car repair that I am aware of.
Okay, and so then would you all be able to then, now that she said that, would you all be able to sort of share if you are aware of any of that? Because that's what I thought was the case. Anyone?
Okay. You have anybody in particular in mind you're directing that to, Sarah?
The woman that talked about Massachusetts, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I can't speak to what the safety issues are, but I know that they're raised in the complaint. And you can sort of go through that. I just sort of scrolled through the safety issues because it's generally not one that we talk about, but they're certainly laid out in the complaint.
Okay, well, you raised it. That's the reason why. Just
Yeah.
out of curiosity. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Mr. Lambert or anybody else for that matter? Okay, I don't believe this time I see any. And that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 412, which takes us to the final bill of the day, Senator Kelly. Welcome back from JPR, Senator Kelly, and we are at Senate Bill 100. And you've got the time you need to present the bill, Senate Bill 100. Final bill.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members. It has been almost 14 years since Maryland tragically lost one of its youngest citizens to a bacterial infection that started in a tube. The death of this young man, the state of Maryland and the dental profession have been on a quest to make sure another tragedy doesn't occur. The good news is that in Maryland, we've made some of the most dramatic and positive changes in the country, as Maryland children are seeing dentists at higher rates than ever. In fact, Maryland has one of the highest percentages of dental encounters by children. According to the 2017 Annual Oral Health Legislative Report, less than 1% of children who were enrolled in our Children's Medicaid program had to be seen in an emergency room for a dental issue. This means better care for the patients and fiscal savings for the state. The progress our state has made due to our commitment: 1, the Healthy Smiles program was established. 2, that program assures that every enrolled child is given a dental home when they receive their enrollment card. 3, Maryland has increased Medicaid reimbursement for dental services. And 4, the effort of the dental community has helped increase participation by dental professionals. While Maryland has made substantial progress with treating the dental Medicaid pediatric population, there are still huge numbers of Marylanders who do not have access to dental care. The reason why these people do not receive dental care are varied, and often it is the result of systemic barriers to care. So this bill is here because of those barriers that still exist. In 2018, the General Assembly enacted the Adult Dental Medicaid Pilot Program, which in the first 7.5 months provided dental treatment to 4,426 Medicaid eligible adults. It appears clear from these data, that the lack of dental coverage under Medicaid and Medicare has been and is a substantial barrier to the access to dental care. Now it's time to support legislation that will help us identify other barriers that contribute to Marylanders of all ages who lack access to oral health care. It's time to take the next step in assessing what is needed to increase access to dental care. Senate Bill 100 will create a task force that will undertake an extensive study of the barriers that still exist to health care in Maryland. to dental care in Maryland. The task force is to be composed of members of the oral health community, advocate organizations, the Board of Dental Examiners, representatives of the community colleges, and the Association of MCOs. The task force will be co-chaired by the Dean of the University of Maryland School of Dentistry and the Deputy Secretary of Public Health Services. It is to be a comprehensive 2-year study to identify the people not receiving dental care and what the barriers are that prevent them from getting this necessary and very essential care. It is to analyze the impact of the barriers, to identify solutions to those barriers, and to report recommendations to the General Assembly and a final report by December 1, 2022. Included among the charges to the task force are A, analyze the current access to dental care for all Marylanders, but with a particular focus on those affected by poverty, disabilities, or age. B, identify areas of the state where significant numbers are not receiving dental care. And C, identify other barriers negatively impacting access to dental care. For example, low oral care literacy, lack of transportation, cost of getting to dental services, etc. And these are just examples. There are many more. The task force is to analyze the impact of specific barriers and assess options to minimize or eliminate each barrier. If we understand the barriers to access to dental care, and if we understand that, like Mr. Driver, only 14 years old, you can die from health problems that were initiated because of a lack of dental care. We can bridge these obstacles and begin to provide appropriate dental treatment to those underserved populations. We can treat the underlying disease and restore dental health, not merely treat the symptoms of the disease with painkillers and opiates. Getting people into regular care with a dentist can help keep people out of the emergency room, keep people healthy, and keep our fiscal house in line. In light of all of these considerations, I urge your strong support of Senate Bill 100.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, with your indulgence, a little bit of an unusual request, I hope you don't mind. Through no fault of his own, we had in the prior bill, there was a gentleman who signed up to testify, but through a mistake by the committee, not him, we overlooked him. And I wonder if you would.
We want to accommodate. We certainly want.
Yeah, so we're going to, Maxwell Block, I know that you're here and we apologize for the oversight. And I know you signed up favorable in the prior bill. So we're going to let you do your thing for 2.5 minutes. Then we're going to go back and take questions of Chair Kelly on her bill. And so again, our apologies to you. So Mr. Block, why don't you go 2.5 minutes?
No problem. I'm sure that with the changed accommodations, it's so thank you, Vice Chair Feldman and Chair Kelly. Yes, so I'm here as a consumer, as a regular person. I've experienced the effective monopoly that's been talked about firsthand many times, and frankly, I've had enough. Others have talked about the benefits of this bill. I'm proud of my lead sponsor, my delegate Feldmark from the House bill, Sierra Club, Maryland PIRG, other comments. I just want to talk briefly, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the necessity of this bill. I also provided some written testimony, 1.5 pages, much shorter than 4 pages. So I heard in the House hearing that 4 pages might have been too long for some folks to read. But frankly, I'm asking for Maryland to be a leader in establishing and protecting my rights as a consumer. I've read the bill. I mean, outside of a bunch of definitions, there's like 2 sentences. I hope that if there are any amendments, they're clarifying. Walking you through a quick role play of what happens for me as a consumer. I go bring my device that's broken and needs repair to an independent repair store. I'm not going to go to some, as some house testimony said, hang a shingle on a sign and pretend to be a repair business. No, I'm going to legitimate businesses that are bonded, insured, have reviews, can warrant their own services. And I say, please fix my consumer electronic device. And they say, sure, let me look into this. Oh, sorry, this device has restrictions put in place by a manufacturer that they only provide the ability to repair to their select few affiliated authorized repair providers. I think authorized is a bit of a confusing term. Really, it's affiliated, programs that lock out, the repair store down the street. I realize I'm probably short on time, but I'm just asking, I think that it's plain language and protects the rights. I mean, the bill says this bill shall not be construed to mean all these confusing things that people says it means. I'm being locked out as a consumer from getting my device fixed, not having to go into an Apple store in person during COVID and having to fork out a lot of money for a new device because I don't want to ship my phone away for 3 months to get repaired and FedEx back to me. So respectfully, I urge a favorable report for this bill, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. And I think it is absolutely necessary as a consumer from Catonsville, Maryland.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Block, for your testimony. And with that, we're going to go back to you, Chair Kelly, with Senate Bill 100. And so on the table, are any questions from members of Chair Kelly on Senate Bill 100? Okay, I don't see any. Madam Chair, you've designated Dan Doherty as your lead witness.
Yes.
I see you there. Why don't you unmute yourself? And because you've been designated as such, you get 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you, Senator Kelly, for sponsoring this bill. Most of you will remember that Senator Kelly sponsored this bill last year. It was Senate Bill 511. The committee passed it unanimously, and in fact, all of the members of last year's Finance Committee were co-sponsors. And it passed unanimously on the floor of the Senate. However, with COVID, when it got to the House, and it was not a cross-filed bill, it was scheduled for a hearing on the 17th of March, and we know what happened right at that time and thereafter. So we are back again asking this committee to once again favorably consider establishing a task force that can provide a comprehensive review and analysis of why so many Marylanders are not receiving appropriate dental care. Oral health has come to be recognized across the medical professions as critical to the overall health of human beings. And we are faced with a situation where many of our citizens are not getting that care. So we need to analyze it, and we need to approach it as is being done by this bill. It must be done comprehensively, not piecemeal. We've taken certain segments of this and looked at it at a snapshot in time, but we haven't gone back and looked at those issues again, and we have not looked at those issues in the relationship of many other obstacles and or barriers. There is an amendment or amendments that I submitted with my testimony at the request of the sponsor, and they're technical. The first one merely changes the co-chair from the Deputy Secretary of Healthcare Financing to the Deputy Secretary of Public Health Services, as the sponsor indicated. And that's a simple reason for that. Public Health Services is a broader spectrum than the health financing. The Second Amendment corrects a technical problem that did not have the report coming back to your committee. And we're adding the Finance Committee, obviously, as a committee that should receive the report. Lastly, we had a hearing on this bill in the House back on the 19th of January. And as a result of that, and as a result of some other bills that have been introduced, two of which you all heard yesterday, Senate Bill 5 and Senate Bill 52, which deal with implicit bias and dealing with health equity. The House has looked at and is considering amendments that would make it clear that this bill should look at those same factors also. So the amendments would basically say, among the things the task force would look at would be race, ethnicity, implicit bias, and socioeconomic status, in addition to what's already there. I think those factors are inherent in what's there now, but I think in light of where we are as a state, we need to state those things specifically. I would, with the committee's indulgence, I would submit those amendments that are being considered at the House to staff following this hearing. With that, I would urge a favorable report, and I'll be glad to try and answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doherty, for your testimony. Any questions of Mr. Doherty from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Senator Kramer.
Yeah, thanks. Not a question, very quick comment. Dan, how wonderful to see you. I know that you're alive and well out there. This is the first time I have laid eyes on you in 2021. I hope all is well with you and Fran. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and we miss seeing you as well. It's been a very odd 12 months.
Okay, well, good to see you too, Dan. I think on behalf of the whole committee, good to see you.
Thank you.
We're going to go to the next witness. We've got Dr. Alexandra Fitzgerald. Dr. Fitzgerald, there you go. You got 2.5 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide oral testimony. As stated, my name is Alexandra Fitzgerald, and I'm a general dentist practicing in Frederick, Maryland as an associate outside of Fort Detrick. I am the chair of the New Dentist Committee of the Maryland State Dental Association, representing dentists within their first 10 years of practice, and I'm also one of the vice chairs of the Legislative Affairs Committee. As a new dentist, my colleagues and I faced a hefty amount of student loan debt early in our careers. According to the University of Maryland, the dental school graduates of 2020 had an average of $261,000 of student loan debt, well above that of the medical and pharmacy school, also four-year programs, and graduates from other programs across the country who come to Maryland often have an even higher debt. The national average was actually over $304,000 this past year. This level of debt affects countless decisions, from personal ones such as when to have a child, if we want to have kids, buying a house, and professional ones as well, namely where to practice. Oftentimes, general dentists and dentists in general will go to areas where patients can better afford care and are more available to receive it. While there has been a substantial increase in progress in ensuring our youngest patients have good oral health care, we need to give an equal amount of attention to boost the oral health of our vulnerable adult populations. COVID-19 has affected everyone, and despite Herculean efforts by the dental community with our super high levels of infection control and sanitation standards, the incidence of dental visits has actually decreased across the state. Since the onset of the pandemic, dental offices were initially closed for 2 months with the exemption of emergency care. Patients are obviously facing economic hardship, as many of us are, and there is a fear of exposure to the virus. As outlined in the legislation, all invested parties will have an opportunity to come together to identify all of the problems, the access to care issues and barriers, and find solutions to help improve oral health care in the state. As Dan Doherty mentioned, many people have suggested splitting this up into various committees and taking a piecemeal approach, but this is only going to prolong and prevent many Marylanders from receiving the oral health care that they need. It will make it more difficult and fragmented to accomplish the overall objective of this legislation and what this legislation will be able to provide. This type of thorough analysis under the bill is critical to help us ensure that all Marylanders will receive the best care that dentistry can provide. And for these reasons, I urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 100. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Any questions for Dr. Fitzgerald? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the next witness. We've got we have Dr. Janet Yelowitz. Dr. Yelowitz, why don't you unmute yourself? And you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Spellman, and committee members. My name is Dr. Janet Yelowitz. I'm a full-time faculty at the University of Maryland School of Dentistry, and my job is primarily to train the dental and dental hygiene students about working with older adults and people with disabilities, as well as frail elders. People with disabilities and the elderly, as you know, are often faced with health inequity due to a wide range of barriers to receiving dental care. Without appropriate care, they are at increased risk for systemic health issues and higher insurance rates. We know that those who receive routine dental care are physically healthier and have lower medical costs. Yet we do not offer that program in this state. Maryland will benefit in both healthcare and insurance costs from a fully implemented quality dental program for underserved and underinsured adults. To get this accomplished, we need to pass Senate Bill 100. This really is a step in the right direction. It's not a short-term plan, it's a long-term study, long-term project, and we need your help. Recently, a program was developed to address the dental needs, as you heard earlier, of a small group of individuals, those who are covered by both Medicare and Medicaid. So the program includes a little bit of prevention, some extractions, some fillings, and stops at age 65. While this is a good start for those enrolled, similar opportunities to receive preventative and routine care are very limited in the state. For students interested in going into dental public health, the possibilities for them to impact a larger population often resides in other states. Approving this bill will be a first step to changing many lives. It is not an easy or quick process, requires a lot of expertise, and the bill proposes members who are aware and will ensure that the plan is comprehensive and appropriate. I ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 100.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Any questions for Dr. Yelowitz? Okay, seeing none, the final witness for the bill and for the day is Thomas Beckett. You, Mr. Beckett, play cleanup batter for the day for the committee. So, Mr. Beckett,
it's always good to be last.
Yeah, 2.5 minutes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Senate Finance Committee. I'm Dr. Tom Beckett, a past president of the Maryland State Dental Association and currently one of the vice chairs of the Legislative Committee. For the past 6 years, since my retirement from full-time active practice, I've spent many hours in the hallways of Annapolis as a volunteer advocate for my profession, dentistry. First, I wish a small thank you or a big thank you to Senator Kelly and the Finance Committee for their unanimous support of this bill last year. Senate Bill 100, the Task Force on Oral Health in Maryland, is a critical piece of legislation to address the multitude of barriers to dental care. The barriers are not all the same for everyone, not one size fits all. It's a comprehensive study. An analogy is looking to buy a used vehicle. One could take a piecemeal approach and go from place to place to check the engine, the transmission, the brakes, or you can go and buy a certified car. Let's do the certified. This is the time to have a comprehensive care. The task force is that methodology. Look at oral health. Find the good, find the flaws, find the failures, and propose the solutions, be it rules and regulations, be it new laws, or just a reallocation of assets and resources. Thank you for your consideration and your past support and the unanimous support from the Senate last year. And I ask for a favorable report. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I know you got another meeting, so God bless.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beckett. Any questions for Mr. Beckett? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 100. Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, thanks so much, Mr. Vice Chair, and thanks to all of the witnesses who've testified today. Colleagues, we're going to be voting in about a half hour. Why don't we be in place at 4 p.m. on bills that we've heard on prior days. Thanks so much.